Well, welcome, Crissy, to Test Those Breasts. I'm so excited to have you here. I am so honored to meet so many amazing people from all over the world, actually. And I know that you are in Florida and you've got some great information to talk to us about today. And I'm just thrilled that you're here. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I am thrilled to be on here and to just conversate with you and, talk about my story and hopefully inspire a lot of your listeners as well that are going through it right now. Myself being on the other side of it now, 3 years, actually 3 years. I have the chills right now. I just thought about that. 3 years on Saturday will be my cancerversary. So
Oh,
this is like perfect timing. So if I get a little emotional, we know why. But I hope that I can also inspire some of the beautiful, some of our beautiful pink sisters that are going through it right now to just hang in there, and you'll get on the other side of it hopefully soon. So
well,
I'm excited.
I know that you have already helped a ton of people. And I will say that the other day when I talked to you on the phone for the first time, you and I seem to be some soul sisters, not only pink sisters, but soul sisters. We have a lot in common.
Yeah.
One being that you are totally into holistic healing. Um, and that's like right up my alley. And I have incorporated a lot of that in my own journey. Um, I would like to at first sort of ask you to share your diagnosis, when you were diagnosed 3 years ago, and what that looked like for you. What was your diagnosis? What were your treatments? Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I'm an open book. So September 23rd, 2020, because as if 2020 could not have gotten any worse,
Right?
I get diagnosed stage 2 triple positive breast cancer on my right breast. And I was so I thought, a super healthy person before I was diagnosed. And I was a yoga instructor for many years. I taught Pilates. I ate well. I lived a fairly happy and joyous life, and with fairly minimal stress other than outside of kind of work at that point. And so I was really shocked. Going through the whole process of meeting the doctors and the biopsies and all the things, I was really shocked when he said, "You have breast cancer." So as you know, world is rocked. You just feel like you are, you're being slammed by a train, and you just don't know where to go. So, um, I, due to everything, I ended up having 6 rounds of chemo. I did the HTCP cocktail for 6 rounds, and then I did 1 full year of targeted therapy with Herceptin and Perjeta. I did a double mastectomy with reconstructive surgery after that. Um, as usual, most doctors, offer for you to do radiation and tamoxifen because I was premenopausal. I opted out of those, and I don't necessarily encourage people to do that right off the bat. For me personally, it didn't feel fully aligned, and that's when I kind of had to really tap into my holistic healing, just connection. And I personally opted out of that. So, but my journey didn't end there. My protocols, I started working with a naturopath, and that's where I really started to incorporate a lot of the holistic healing. But back up a little bit, when I was going through chemo, I really did a lot of meditation and breath work and somatic releasing. And that is where I was also doing some of the Western stuff, but accompanying it with the Eastern healing modalities alongside of that. So I was able to really connect to myself on a completely different level than I had ever been in before. So it was really beautiful. And that's why I just love the matching and kind of reducing the bridge between the Eastern and the Western world, and conventional care and holistic care, and just encourage people, like, we can do this together. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You really can start to incorporate some of the holistic healing modalities in with some of the conventional care as well.
Right,
So,
right. I am completely agree with you. That is something that I started doing very early on just because I've always been into holistic healing and I understand that there is a place for Western medicine.
yep,
Totally.
yeah,
But there's also a place for Eastern medicine, and that is where I was like, "Okay, what am I gonna do for myself?" And I interviewed a gal or excuse me, I interviewed a man named Eddie Enever
mm,
from Australia a while back, and I actually reached out to him on Facebook, and I've told this story before, because right before my chemo started, I was in a bad place. I mean, I was so scared,
yeah,
anxious, pissed off, the whole 9
all
yards,
the things,
and I
all the things.
felt like, "Oh my gosh," I was falling into this deep, dark hole,
Mm,
and I knew that I needed to do something to pull myself out, because if I did not, then I knew that it would go a bad way.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so I remember in the middle of the night, he lives in Australia, so I was I was looking around on Facebook and I found him, and he is a wonderful, wonderful therapist. He's a three-time cancer survivor, he figured out the formula almost, like, so it's like,
yeah,
how did this guy get to the point where he's cancer free and he's still, cancer free today and everything? So I reached out to him and said, "Hey,
hmm,
I was just diagnosed with breast cancer and I need your help. I need to
yeah.
figure
What do I
out
do?
what
Yeah,
do I
you're
do?"
lost.
So
Yeah.
he did. He reached out to me almost right away, and
Hmm.
so I worked with him and we zoomed and he helped me. He really, really pulled me right out of that
Yeah.
hole. And so I think the first step is to recognize that, e- as scary as it is, you got to figure out
Yeah.
how to get through it
Yep.
and help your mind. It's not just about the medicine, about the physical cancer. It's about your mental and emotional health. And
Energetic body
yeah,
as well. In the
yeah.
yoga world, in the yoga philosophy, we have 5 bodies, right? And we have our physical body, which most people can connect to the quickest. We have our emotional body, we have our energetic body, and then we have the wisdom and the bliss body. And I had always kind of tuned into the physical and the emotional body because as Americans, that's kind of what we can easily tap into those, I think. Maybe not the emotional as much as I would like most people to, but we're working on that one. um, but the energy, I had a chronic energy healer working on me when I was going through my chemo. And one of the most profound pieces of inspiration she gave me was right before I was starting my first chemo. Of course, we're scared. We hear chemo and we're like, oh my God, it's poison. Oh, what is it going to do to my body? And all the things. And she said, don't flip the script of it. The chemo drugs are going to your body. They're taking away the cancer. And have a conversation, have a relationship with the chemo drugs. Say thank you for doing your job. Go where you're needed, and then leave the rest of my body unharmed. And it was so beautiful. And I've actually used that same mentality in so many other different things where, oh gosh, I got to go to the doctor again. I don't want to go. Right. And then I just flip the script of like, thank you that I have a doctor that I can go to that can just double check and make sure everything is good. And instead of just adding, being negative about it and unhappy about it and dreading I'm trying to flip the script, and it brings you into much more of a positive mindset, and you feel lighter when you're more positive. And when
Mhm.
you're first diagnosed with cancer, we all know we're going down that rabbit hole of like, oh my gosh, everything is going on. None of this feels right. This is scary. Fear is taking over. I completely get it because I was that way too. But then I realized like I just need to scale back a little bit, and how can I make myself feel good in the moment? Because when we are stressed and fear based, angry and like, and listen, don't get me wrong, feel the feelings, right? Like
Yes.
get angry when you need to, cry when you need to, laugh when you need to, be happy when you can. Feel all the feelings. I'm not saying just like put them off to the side. Feel them, get them out of the body. But we feel better when we're like light and just really, relaxed. And even though most of us think, how can you even tell me I can get into a relaxed, peaceful state when I'm going through cancer? I promise you, you can if you allow yourself to just shed the layers of it and be in the present moment and just be right here, right now. Because if you are thinking about the past, then that can bring you into a little bit of a depressed state, right? If you're thinking about the past, you're thinking about the old person that you were before, or things that happened, or what you could have done, that you're here right now. You can't change that now. And if you're thinking too far ahead in the future, fear-based thoughts about how is the chemo going to work? Is the cancer going to go away? How am I going to do in surgeries? How is the radiation going to affect my body? All the things. Then you can potentially throw yourself right into anxiety, right? So, but when you're present and you're grounded and you're in the moment, this is really the only place where life exists. Right now, if you and I will never have this exact moment ever again, right? So it's such a beautiful place to live if you choose to see it that way. And I just, in my journey, I'm really finding that one of my biggest missions is to help women feel empowered, feel connected, feel at peace going through their journey so that they're calm, because if their bodies are in a, stress state, if they're in their sympathetic nervous system and they're constantly in that fight or flight, they're not doing their bodies any kind of justice for
Right.
healing. So healing, you need to be you have to be in a peaceful state. You have to be grounded and connected and, and finding that sense of love and compassion for yourself.
Right. And I
Yeah.
really appreciate your bringing in that it is okay to feel the feels. I mean, we're human beings, and I feel like sometimes we just need to let that
Right.
like walk into it, let it go through our bodies because I had all of them. I had the whole gamut. And
That's how we still do, right? I mean,
yes. Yes.
3 years later, when I get off the phone with you today, I'm probably going to just go and cry a little bit to help release because, Saturday is 3 years from hearing those
Yes.
words, you have breast cancer. And that is like, that's a lot and it's heavy. And the journey to healing is not an overnight thing. It is a continuous thing. And we have to give ourselves the grace to be able to heal through this. And another thing that somebody told me right before I was getting ready to start, one of the, like, I just love this comment is grow through what you go through, right?
Mm,
And you can't just like go around cancer. You can't go around those feelings because they're going to come back and haunt you, but you have to just go through them. You have to just feel them and, release where you need to, whether that's through meditation or journaling. I love journaling. You can do, if you're going through chemo, consult your doctor first, but acupressure, acupuncture, massages, EFT tapping. There's so many holistic modalities that can help you release the emotions and continue moving forward, which also helps your body too.
yeah.
Right.
It's interesting that you said that that gal had said to have a relationship with chemo.
Yeah.
Um, I did. My chemo was a phoenix.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Somehow
love it. Right? Oh,
before I started it,
yes. Yeah.
yeah, before I started, I went to this art show with my husband and it was like chalk art. And this gal
Mm-hmm.
had created this amazing phoenix and it was called Phoenix Catching Fire.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
had it was just the most spectacular, amazing. And anyway, I used that picture on my private Facebook group that I shared my whole entire story. Like I went live and all that.
Yeah.
It was called Phoenix Catching Fire, Jamie's cancer story. And that was how I was able to have that relationship with my chemo I'd be
Mhm.
sitting here on the couch, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
when
That's
I start
feeling your
feeling like,
worst.
and I had meditation. I had like this meditation music on my TV, just going and going and going. And it seemed like time just slowed way
Oh, yeah.
down.
Yeah.
And like I would fall asleep and I'd be so excited. I'd wake up and I was like, oh my gosh, I fell asleep. And it was like 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so what I always tell people is it's one moment at a time, one day
Yes,
at a
one foot in
time.
front of
One
the other, one day at a
yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's, it's really hard, and but having that relationship with the chemo, and having a relationship with a core group of, maybe
Yeah.
friends or something like that is
Absolutely, and we'll definitely talk about support and community and all of that. But I do have just to kind of backtrack again with your story of the Phoenix. I kind of had a similar story to this, and it still is like, oof. I got a massage before I started chemo, and she put me in such a meditative state in this massage that I had a visualization in this meditation in a massage where I was in my body and my body was just this field of gorgeous flowers, bright, beautiful flowers everywhere. And there was this black panther, strong, sleek, gorgeous, like beautiful, just like on the prowl. And it was just like walking through the flowers. Again, still, oh my gosh,
oh,
walking through, and it was searching out. It was seeking the cancer because my Black Panther was going to go ahead and get all of that stuff out. All of that stuff out. And it was like, oh my God, I mean, I still see it today, 3 years later. It was
that's
insane. And
amazing.
today, it might be actually 3 years today that I had the massage. Wow, crazy.
See,
But
and
yeah,
here, and yeah,
so
see,
yeah,
dates are so important.
yeah. And I
uh,
actually I put like a letter about it, and I found like a year later, I found an actual picture that almost represented this this vision that I had. And it was this Black Panther going through this gorgeous woman, and I was like, oh wow, wow. So it's on my website. I was like, I have to like, oh, this is like, I have it printed up here and everything. It's amazing.
I
But
love that.
yeah, but coming back to community and support, and there's so much I really can say about this. And I understand that every woman going through this journey has a different journey. There is no two that are exactly the same, right? Nobody is living the same protocols and have the same background and family and friends and all the things. But I know you and I briefly kind of talked about this, and I just think it boils down to community and support are so important to have. Whether that is your family, some people have, a little weird family dynamic. So it might not necessarily be your family. It could be friends who feel like family. If you still don't have that many friends, it could be support groups, at your cancer center, online support groups. There are so many breast cancer online support groups that are out there. And I see these women cheering other women on who are scared and vulnerable and just at the start of their process. So, I just think that understanding, first of all, that you cannot go through this fully alone. I think it's important to be open and vulnerable about it to the extent that you feel is comfortable for you, right? Everybody is a little different. You were very open and vocal about it. I was very open and vocal about it too. I had the same thing. I had my own Facebook page where I invited certain people to it. But instead of getting 50 million texts and calls a day, after chemo days over, I would just check in and let them all know how I was feeling, and they felt really good and connected to that. But I know that in certain times throughout my process anyways, and my journey, I found that there were times where I felt a little disappointed in maybe certain people or certain things, like, and if they weren't showing up the way that I thought they should, right? Quote unquote, thought they should. And it really boils down to, again, this is kind of another yoga concept that I live by, is not living with expectations. So I'm putting my expectations on somebody else and expecting them to make me feel a certain way when they have no idea that I'm expecting them to reach out every so often, or, hey, call and bring me, well, I was going through COVID, so they couldn't really bring me anything, but just certain things like that. And I think that it's important to, in the beginning of your process, maybe take a few moments or a few days and envision what you feel you think you're going to want from your support group. How supported and vulnerable do you want to be? What do you feel you're going to need? Do you want them to do meal chains? Do you want them to do a GoFundMe? Do you want them to do like gifts before your chemo or surgery? And I think it's that's the piece too for me. I know it's super hard. I don't like to ask for help. I was always like, oh, I'll just do it. It's no big deal. Right. So the asking, being vulnerable and asking for help sometimes is very difficult too. But that's where the growth is. And, if
Mhm.
you really think about cancer, it's an opportunity for each of us to grow into a newer version of ourselves. This was given to us for some reason or another, not looking for necessarily the why, or even the how, but I think it's important to realize like this is an opportunity for growth, and I can be somebody completely different, and I can use my voice more, and I could be more vulnerable and more open. And what more of a perfect time and more beautiful time than to be vulnerable going through this journey? And so to be able to express that, you have to be able to express it to your tribe, because if not, you're going to be upset. And again, we don't need any of that. Right. So I think just kind of understanding what you want out of this. And if something comes up, being able to kind of go to your people and be like, hey, listen, can you bring me a green smoothie today?
Yeah.
So I think it's important.
Yeah. So thank you for talking about that because I think it's very difficult sometimes for people to understand that. I have actually experienced that myself in a few different things in my life where I had the expectation like, you're my you're like I've known you for this long. Why are you not showing up for me? And I believe that I really learned throughout the last year that those expectations sometimes harm us and can
Yeah.
harm relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that just everyone is in a space where they can do what they can do. They
Yeah.
can say what they can say. And sometimes they don't even know what to say. And
I was
I've
just
learned,
about to say that. Exactly.
yeah,
Some people just don't know. They
yeah,
feel awkward. They don't want to bother you. They don't want to upset you. And, there are certain people that are over the last few years, I've spoken to a lot of women that some of them like, oh, I don't want them asking me about this, or, they're a little bit more closed off. So I can understand where sometimes their support group would be like, I don't know how to ask or how to like
mhm,
treat this situation because they're a little bit more closed off. So again, I think it's just everybody being open and understanding and releasing expectations. So
yeah,
them releasing expectations on you, you releasing expectations on them, because there's a quote out there too. The expectations is the root of all disappointments. And it's so true. I mean, you expect something, you don't get it, you're disappointed. Boom.
yes.
Yeah.
And we
So,
internalize it and it really
yeah.
hurts. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes if you can be open enough to say to that person, hey, I'm just wondering why I don't,
Mhm.
it is okay to say something to them,
Yeah.
but just know that something else might be going on in their mind. Now, when
Right.
it comes to caregivers like husbands, um, I don't know if you're married. I am
And
married. I have a wonderful husband who was a great caregiver, and we went through our issues. We're in therapy now. I
hmm
know that there's a pretty large percentage of couples who end up divorced because of a cancer diagnosis like this.
yeah,
And
it's
and
heavy.
yeah, it's very heavy and
It's heavy.
sometimes they don't know how to deal with it, but it's really nice to have someone who you can say something to, and then they have the strength to grow and
Mhm.
learn and go to therapy and be, and but for some people it just doesn't happen that way. And that just breaks my heart.
Oh, absolutely.
Ugh.
Absolutely. I think that, in anything, any type of healing, any type of traumatic experiences, having um, a go-to person, whether it's a husband, a wife, a spouse, a best friend, a sister, a brother, a mother, father, whatever it is, I think in any type of life experience, it doesn't have to be something
Mhm.
super traumatic or not. It boils down to communication, to be able to vocally communicate what you need when something doesn't feel right, and then and not have it mean so much. Like everybody is um everybody is affected by cancer when one person is diagnosed, right? I am happily married. I married my high school sweetheart. We've been married for 30 we've been together for 32 years, 31 years, and married for 22. So, when this happened, I know I have a very tough time doing the math sometimes. When this happened, it very much affected him and my two children. And I, I obviously, I think there were times where he would be upset and he wouldn't necessarily want to come to me to express his emotions, but I, really kind of reached out to some of his friends, some of my best friends and their husbands, and just say, hey, listen. And same thing with my kids. Hey, listen, take just check on them from time to time because they probably aren't going to be able to express what they want to, what they need to get out to
Mhm.
me because I'm doing my own healing and going through my own stuff. But it is super important for them to be able to express their own stuff too, because anything stuck in the body is not good for anybody, right? So they don't have cancer. They're not going through it physically, but energetically, emotionally, mentally, it's affecting them. And that could potentially cause harm in their bodies as well. So
Right.
we don't want any of that. The
Well,
ultimate
I'm really
goal is to be healthy.
Well, I'm really glad that you guys stayed together, and obviously you have a pretty strong family unit. And I know that sometimes if there's not really a strong family unit in certain ways or something is broken, that can really harm a relationship. And I just really want to tell my audience that, you know, if you are a caregiver or you are someone who is going through cancer right now, I highly encourage therapy. I
Yeah.
really do. Finding someone that you can talk to with your spouse and,
And
just to
even,
give it a whirl, get like
yeah,
give it that space and time and understand that you are going to be a different type of person, you
yeah,
know? I just really encourage that a lot from the get-go because things are not
absolutely.
going to be the same.
No, no. And nor should you.
Yeah.
Something really big is happening in your world and with somebody that you love. And it's really important to understand that it is also, in a sense, happening to you as well. But alongside the concept of support, going back to, going through counseling, there's also a ton of caregiver support groups also at the
Yes.
cancer centers. And I don't want to dismiss any of the programs that the cancer centers provide because most of them are free and you are connecting to people in your community, which again is really big for healing in itself. Just being a part of something bigger than you it can heal you. It puts you into a position where you're with people who are going through similar, not exact, but similar situations as you that you can relate to. So whether you have the cancer or you're the caretaker or some support somewhere or the other, check in with your cancer centers. There's so many
Yeah.
free options for you, nutritional,
Mhm.
support as well. And I know here in town, we also have, it's actually down in Palm Beach, but there's a beautiful integrative care center, that they integrate Eastern and Western. So they don't actually do a lot of the traditional conventional stuff there, but they integrate a lot of the holistic healing, and doctors around in surrounding hospitals refer their clients to them to go get counseling, nutrition, support, meditation, yoga, all the things, qigong, like amazing things for your body for healing. So,
This is something we have a wonderful organization here called Cancer Community Clubhouse. You should look it up. It's really
oh
cool.
yeah,
It is run primarily really by my wonderful friend Natalie Stevenson, and I actually interviewed her a while back. So if you listen to her episode, it's wonderful. But it is all about bringing those resources together in a centralized area where doctors can refer people to come to the community clubhouse and get that kind of support, and it's primarily around the support for survivors,
yes,
cancer survivors, and
right.
how do we live in our survivorship with the understanding
Mm,
that you become a survivor once you are diagnosed. And so
right.
how can we support someone who was just diagnosed, someone who's going through treatment? How do we support the caregivers?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just this whole idea of this centralized support group
Beautiful.
all in one where all of the doctors know about it. And so
Yes.
that's what we're trying to build.
That's the
And I just
bridge,
think it's
right? That's
yes,
the bridge.
yes.
That is the bridge that I feel so passionate about now, that I just, there's so many, and I'm not saying this for all doctors because we have made, leaps and bounds, but there still are a lot of doctors that think a lot of this stuff is still woo woo. The energy work that I had my chronic energy healer doing on me when I was going through chemo, they would think it's woo woo. When I, so there, but it's getting better. I think it's getting better, and I know we still have a ways to go. But that is one of my missions now, is how can I help bridge that gap and help more and more women feel empowered in their own
Yes.
bodies. And to the point of your survivorship, you are a survivor when you first get diagnosed, but there are so many levels to it, because I
Mhm.
remember when I was done with my chemo and my mastectomy, and I'm technically cancer free, and I started to get my taste buds back and all of the things, then I was like, what? I
Yes.
can tell you, I went down that rabbit hole. I was just eating to just throw healthy stuff in my mouth. I mean, listen, I made a lot of changes along the way as I could. When I was going through chemo, my taste buds were terrible. I just tried to eat what I could. By the sixth one, that was broth. Like, it got down to where I really could only get in broth. But I remember, like, I'll backtrack real quick. I remember I was watching Dr. Oz probably 12 years ago. And I remember there was a lady on there with stage 4. I don't remember what type of cancer, but stage 4 cancer. And she healed herself with doing an all greens smoothies and all of the things. I'm not saying do that. I'm not going to get down that route of nutrition and all of that, because I'm no doctor. But I have read a lot of amazing books about plant-based diets and just eating your greens and eating for cancer, right? We're eating food as nutrition.
Yeah.
So in my journey, after I was done and had my taste buds finally back, I started to kind of go down that rabbit hole of not really caring about what I eat as in the form of bringing me joy, but just throwing everything in my mouth. And I was so neurotic, and it was not serving me at all. I love food. I do love wine. It's more celebratory for me. My husband's Italian. We love big Italian meals and things like that. So I had to do a lot of internal work to get myself out of that fear-based living. I could not live in a fear-based world where I was so fearful of reoccurrence that I was just not living a life of joy. And I find I did a 12-week growth course, and that was really, really beautiful because that was all for breast cancer thrivers. And that was the whole thing, how to thrive after yoga. I mean, after yoga, after breast cancer, and learning to love your body again, and, healing certain things from when we were little and pre-cancer and all the things. And so it was just a lot of beautiful work that I've done since then. And I think that's really important too, that when you get that you're cancer free, those amazing, amazing news, it still can kind of still keep you in a very fear based mindset, because that fear of reoccurrence is a real thing. It's real. It's scary. But I think that it's super important for women to be empowered, to know their body, to really connect to what feels right to them, and then doing the work. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to sit and meditate every day and I'm going to be healthy, or I'm going to do yoga every day, I'm going to be healthy. No, it's, you have to do that. You have to heal certain things. You have to, I don't know if I love this term, but say goodbye to the old person that you were, and step into this beautiful warrior that you are now, and so there's just a lot of like mindset work that you can do, and a lot of just daily things that you can start to incorporate to start to feel more empowered, more connected, more loving, present, and more loving with your body, that you're working together. Your mind and your body and your soul and your heart are all one, and you're working together.
You had mentioned something about sometimes doctors thinking all that stuff is woo woo.
Yeah.
In my opinion, if I was to come across a doctor like that, I would turn around and walk
Yeah.
out the door. It's
Yeah.
just, I do not believe, I feel like that is not serving the patient themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the premises behind the Cancer Community Clubhouse is we want doctors, we want providers to be able to recognize things that are going on with their patients, whether they're having some sort of mental breakdown. I will tell you that whenever I went into my oncologist, I probably left there most of the time in tears
Yeah, I
because
agree.
there was
Yeah.
something else. And rather than saying things like, you need to get yourself together, that you're going to have a heart attack, it kind of freak you out. We want providers to be able to say, Crissy, I know
I
you're
get
going through
it.
a hard
Yeah.
time. I am so sorry this is happening. I highly recommend going to this wonderful Cancer Community Clubhouse. They have great meetups for you, maybe to talk to some other people, or
Mm-hmm.
here's a card for a therapist that I think can really help you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it kind of becomes this almost a shared decision making relationship with the patient, because all patients are different, all doctors
Yeah.
are different, but having that doctor have that wonderful conversation with you to help
Yeah.
pull you out of that fear and anxiety. And so
Comes
I'm
down to
just,
compassion, right? Like
yes,
having
yes,
the doctors that you meet with have a sense of compassion for what you're going through, and not
right.
look at you as just being another patient, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Looking at you, Jamie, as a beautiful woman that you are, of a certain age, of a certain race, right? Like it's, you are you as an individual. Don't group me into, I am a certain person of a certain age and that's it. Like, right? I am Crissy. I am this beautiful being. My gel cells and genes are much different than the person next to me. And I want you to meet me with a sense of compassion. I don't want you just to look at me as another patient. It's
right.
super important.
Speaking of beautiful Chrissy, you've got amazing hair.
Ah,
Um,
yes,
I I want to switch gears here for a second.
yes,
You had
yes,
mentioned that you did cold capping, and I
good.
want to hear. So when I was in my infusion center getting my chemo, I ran across two beautiful people that I know who were doing cold capping. One girl that I just happened to know, we didn't realize it,
Oh,
but
wow.
we had mutual friends, and I knew who she was, and she knew who I was because our mutual friend had talked about me. and she was
Mhm.
doing this cold capping. And so I had this conversation with her. I haven't talked to her too much about it. It's another girl that I ran across after my breast surgery back in December who overheard me talking about the surgery that I had in New Orleans, and she wanted to know
Mhm.
about it. She had heard about it and all this. And I discovered that I could actually pull back this like partition after all the time that I was in there. I never knew that, but I could actually pull it back and see the person next to me because she wanted to be in on the conversation. And her husband was actually doing all the cold capping
Yeah,
for her. So,
same.
what is your experience with that? Tell
Whew.
us.
Oh, it was quite interesting, I will say. It's I'm glad I did it now. It was intense, I'm not gonna lie. So basically on my six hardcore infusions, the ones that included the drugs that potentially could make my hair fall out, I had to do the cold capping on those days. And there was a lot that went into it before I decided I'm gonna do it. And I think that one of the biggest reasons why is because one of the drugs that I was supposed to take, one of the side effects was permanent hair loss. And that scared me. That just scared me. I knew my
Yeah.
hair would fall out probably within two infusions, but the permanent part, I was like, so, and my husband is bald, and he said, "You can't have my look in the family. That's mine."
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
I
My
said, "Okay,
husband
babe."
my husband, he does have hair, but he wears it very, very short as if he's kind of bald. So we have he calls them weefies. We took weefies when instead of selfies
Yeah.
when I was bald. So it was like
Oh, how cute. I love it. I love it. So yeah, so it was intense. My infusion center did not have the automatic one, so there are a couple that you can do. We had to do ours manually. So we would come lugging in to the infusion room. And the great thing about us doing it and doing it through COVID is that I did not have to do my infusions in the infusion room. I had one of the exam rooms all to myself and my husband all day because they couldn't have him go back there. So they let us have an exam room, which was amazing, very personable, and it was lovely. So we would come in with our, bags of stuff and cooler of, I had six caps. I actually used the company Chemo Cold Caps out of Texas, but there's a few different ones, like Penguin and a couple other ones. And so, kind of for 6 hours, I would have to put these caps on my head. My husband would have to wet my hair, and then I would put little things here over my, forehead, maxi pads over my ears to make sure that the cold caps never touched my head because they were negative 35 to 40 degrees. Yeah. So, and mind you, I was super scared about this because I'm a native Floridian and I teach hot yoga. So I love to be warm. I hate to be cold. So I was a little nervous about it. But so, we would have to do it for starting 50 minutes before I started one of the bad drugs and then for 3 hours after. So it would be equivalent to about 6 hours a day that I would have to be switching out these. We had six of them that we played on rotation. Every 15 to 20 minutes, my husband would have to take it off and put on a new one and put it back in the cooler, and then we would rotate through those. And I would probably have anywhere from 18 to 20 caps on my head throughout that 6 hour process. So it was a lot. It's not easy. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all because I believe in really just telling it like it is. But I'm glad I did it, because, I know you guys, the listeners can't see it, but Jamie, you can see it. These are all my new hairs. I did lose some on top of my head, like right at the crown. And those are now my baby hairs. I always call them my little baby hairs. So
but
they're that
but
long now.
but it kept the hair all the underneath that you kept. So I think that that is very similar to my two friends who
Yeah.
went through it. I know that they lost some.
A little bit up
Uh,
there. You wouldn't be able to tell. that I was going through what I was going through. If you saw me out and about, which I barely was because it was COVID time, but I lost probably about maybe 15-20% of my hair. So it thinned out a good bit, but I have really a lot of hair. So you really couldn't tell. And I know some women, I know a lot of women who've done it and it's worked well. And I know, some women who've already had maybe not as healthy hair, thinner hair, and it didn't do as well. So it's not, a secure thing or insured thing that you're going to keep all your hair.
And it's expensive, right?
And it's expensive, and it's not covered by insurance. But it was just, it was one of those things that my husband felt that he could do for me. It made it, and coming back to like the support, it gave him a job to do when I was going through what I was going through. And that brings me a little teary-eyed, right? So
husbands need to feel that they are really supporting their wives.
Yeah.
And or should I say anyone who is a caregiver, whether
Exactly.
you are a woman married to a woman or whatever.
Yeah.
And we cannot forget the men. I
No,
have a lot of people telling me, yeah.
133 men get breast cancer.
Yes.
133. I'm getting ready to do a kind of like I don't want to call it preventative, but holistic health, breast health care, like a 101 type of workshop in my local yoga studio that I teach at. And that's how I know that, because I was just doing some research. I'm like, 1 in 833 men also get breast cancer. So
yeah, one of our friends' husbands had breast cancer, and I never knew that before.
Yeah.
So that is just something that really was a total shocker. But I mean, it makes sense. They have breasts. I mean,
right.
Yeah. So, so basically it worked for you, which is nice.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah. It's just, I'm happy I did it. I did almost, give up on the second time around, and my husband and my best friend, they talked me back into it and just basically said, give it another shot. And I did, and I'm glad I did. So,
good.
Hang in there, old Capper sisters.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to have my friend on my show here pretty quick talking a little more about the cold capping. So, because I mean, when I got cancer, I had people reaching out to me and saying, hey, there's this cold capping. And I looked into it, and there was such a small window of time that before I knew that I had to have. So, for me to order it, get it, learn it, all this stuff, I was starting chemo here pretty quick. And so finally I was just like, you know what? It's just going to go. And so what I ended up doing for women who are faced with this possibility of losing their hair, I knew I was going to lose my hair. So what I did is I gathered a few of my friends who are in my tribe, and we all went to this local little salon and got my hair cut into this badass haircut. So my hair was always long and blonde.
Okay.
This is my mom's color. I bloomed my mother, which is totally fine. I just love it. So she always had short, dark hair. So I got this like A-line cut, and I shaved the whole side of my hair. So it was like this really cool, badass haircut. And I'm looking at myself going, man, I love this. Too bad it's going to be gone in 2 weeks. So, and it was like right after my first chemo, it started. So I told my husband, I said, now, once I start feeling like it's coming out, like I see that it's coming out, we're going to shave it. So we did. We went up to one of our favorite places that we go camping and visiting some friends, and I brought the clippers with me. And at first he was like, I don't know if I want to do this, babe. He says, I go, why not? And he says, it's going to be too traumatic for you. And I go, babe, I've already gone through the trauma, right? I already have embraced the fact that I'm going to lose my hair. You need to cut my hair. You need to shave my head. So we sat on the porch, and he cut it into this pixie, and then he shaved it. We have pictures and video and everything. And then I just sort of embraced the baldness. I went hog wild on turbans and beanies, and I never wore a wig. I do have a wig, but I never wore it. So, but I ordered these fun headwear and
Mhm.
just embraced it. And
Right, right. I think there's something to be said about embracing what is, right? What is, you had to go bald. You did
yeah,
it in a celebratory way. And I think there's just something to be said about celebrating what is and being accepting of what is.
well, what's really funny is that people said, "Oh my God, you have such a pretty head. You've got such a beautiful head. Who knew? I would never have
Exactly.
shaved my head. I would never
Thank
have
you,
cut my hair
Jennifer.
this
Thank
short." And I'm
you.
like, okay, so at least I know now that if did go bald again, or I'm probably going to keep my hair short because most people love my hair
You.
short, and
Yeah.
I do love it. It's totally not even something I would have done on purpose.
Well, I think you can rock it. And
Well,
I think you look, I love it. So whatever
thank
you
you.
feel comfortable in, Queen. I
Yes.
think that's the thing is like, you just have to be comfortable with whatever feels right
Yeah.
to you. If it
Yes.
means shaving your head, if it means doing the cold capping, if it means wearing the wigs or doing the turbans,
Yeah.
just whatever feels right to you.
Right.
That's that sense of empowerment of like, you know what? I'm going with it.
Well, and I brought a lot of humor into it also. So, like, I was camping one time and my husband and I were all by ourselves. We're retired. We do this midweek stuff. Nobody was around. So I'm sitting there watching the sunset. I was bald. I had my little kimono on. I was in my lounge chair. My husband was in the trailer making hamburgers or something. I don't even remember what he was doing. He was making dinner. And all of a sudden I hear this, hello. And I turned around. I'm like, oh my God, hold on. And I put it back on. And she can like, it was like I was naked or something.
Right,
So funny.
right.
And she walked up and I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm bald. I have cancer. And she goes, oh, I kind of figured it was the camp host. But
Oh,
it was just the funniest thing because I literally was like I was naked or something. Anyway, okay. We could talk forever and
I
ever.
know.
We need to wrap this up, and I want to know you have a quick breathe work and meditation thing
Yeah,
that you want to
yeah.
do.
I would love to leave all of your listeners with just a little regulating of the nervous system because cancer is very stressful. And when we are stressed in our body, our nervous system is so highly activated and it brings so much more harm to our body. So I'd like to leave everybody with just a little bit of breath work and get into the body and just kind of regulate and bring a sense of calm to everybody. So as long as you're not driving, keep your hands on the wheel. Don't close your eyes. But if you're in a place where you can go ahead and close your eyes, we'll go ahead and do that. And I want you to just take both of your palms and just kind of rest them right over your heart space if that feels okay. And if you're not comfortable with keeping the eyes fully closed, just soften them at best. And then just take a few moments and find that sense of comfort with the eyes closed. And we're going to just start to take a few deep breaths here. It's what we call samavriti pranayama. And pranayama is not necessarily breath work, but it is a way to help to move energy around and out. And in this breath work, it's basically a 4-part breath or square breathing, some people call it. So if you can, take a nice full deep inhale in through the nose, start to feel the belly expand. Take about a 4-count breath. Hold it at the top of that inhale for 4, and exhaling through the nose for that same 4-part or 4 count. And hold the body empty at the bottom of the exhale. And again, inhale in through the nose for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it full for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale through the nose. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold empty. 4, 3, 2, 1. You can either keep with that breath or just find a very natural inhale and exhale in and out through the nose. And I just want to guide you all deeper into the body just for a few moments. So bring your attention and awareness to the space between the eyebrows. This is what we call our third eye or our intuition. And almost visualize that you are wearing one of those headlamps. And typically the light of the headlamp is going outward or external. But I want you to turn it around and have it go internal, have it go inside, and allow that light to start to shine as you go deeper and deeper into the body. Almost just like a little flashlight, just going around searching for areas where there may need to be a sense of healing. You might, if you're going through breast cancer, you might stop and pause at the breath. But also as you're starting to explore the body, just noticing where within you feel tense, and just notice how you can soften the jaw, the shoulders. Keep those deep, beautiful breaths flowing in and flowing out, and that light shining through the depths of the body. And maybe noticing anything else that's starting to come up. The body loves to communicate when something doesn't feel right, or when something does feel really right. Just embrace this moment, this presence that closing the eyes and breathing and just hands to the heart provides you, a sense of connection. And then taking another full deep inhale. This time we're just going to open up through the mouth and exhale, release, and let go of any resistance. Let go of anything that's not serving you. Let it go with that exhale. And then start to bring some movement into the fingertips. Maybe start to blink the eyes open. Resting the backs of the hands on the thighs, and bring a smile to your face. How do you feel? Maybe take a moment and just notice, like,
I feel good.
Good.
I feel that is so helpful to me. So any doctor who says that's woo-woo, I'm sorry. I just think that's I think it's just not
connection to yourself.
Yeah.
It's so like it's almost like you're just giving yourself a big hug, externally and internally, around your heart, everywhere. It's just so yummy.
My friend Paula, who is a therapist, she's wonderful. She's one of my very best friends, and she did that for me before. I think it was before I started cancer. I needed that light work. I needed that energy work and everything, and it was just so nice. And so thank you for doing that for my audience. And I would like to wrap up by asking you to share some of the resources that you have provided that I will be putting in the show notes.
Sure. So I know, some of the books that I initially connected to right when I was first diagnosed was How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. I know it sounds pretty morbid, but it is a phenomenal book. It is very plant-based driven, but phenomenal. A lot of great information into it. Anti-Cancer was another great book. Crazy Sexy Cancer by Chris Carr was an amazing book. And then, I think that doing your research, I think that putting yourself out there, doing your research on certain things and noticing when something feels right to you is really, really important, because you're going to get a ton of information and suggestions and, so many people throwing things out at you. But I think it boils down to really what feels right when you go on a website or when you read a book or podcasts. I mean, podcasts are amazing. And then I know I had a few more that I probably put there, so you'll put those on the.
Well, I have your Instagram page, your Facebook page. You have a YouTube page.
Yeah, and I think the best is to, you can reach me at my website, which is just healinginharmony.net.
I do see that. Yeah.
And I'd love if anybody wants to connect. I'd be happy to kind of give some of your listeners a little gift if they wanted to, because I do a lot of online sessions. I do a lot of work with meditation and yoga for cancer recovery and therapeutic yoga, some lymphatics and yoga. So I do a lot of privates online, and I'd love to do kind of a little special for them. So if they want to reach out to me and put in the notes, hashtag, what did I do? Hashtag, test those boobies. Put that in the email to me, and I'll give you a little gift.
Okay, so did you put that in there?
No, I did not.
Okay, we'll put that in there. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like a partnership coming on right now with us.
I would love.
Yeah, for sure. Because I'm so such a believer in working together, no matter where we are, supporting each other's, uh, efforts to be able to support others, right?
Yeah, because
So,
it's much bigger than just you or just me. It's
mm,
much bigger than us. I mean, the more and more women or people that collaborate and come together and make certain things known and help some of our
yeah,
sisters get through this and on the other side and continue to thrive and all of the things. I mean, that's really, if you feel called to do this work, that's why I feel I was gifted cancer.
yeah.
I felt like I was gifted cancer because I know I can help make a difference in this world. And it starts one person at a time, but it's going to get bigger and bigger with collaborating like
Yeah.
beautiful souls, with beautiful souls like yourself.
Well, I think that you are an amazing human being, and I
Thank
feel
you.
very honored that we got to connect like this. And I feel like we have a friendship brewing here, and we will stay in touch. And is there anything else you would like to leave us with before we wrap up?
You know, I feel it's super important for you beautiful women and men to understand the power that you have within you, that you don't need external factors. There is a beautiful quote from Hippocrates that I absolutely love, and it's the natural forces within us are the true healers of disease. So you have that strong warrior force within you to help fight this and to come on the other side of this happy and healthy and thriving and just keep doing the work.
What a beautiful thing to leave us with. What a beautiful message. And Chrissy, thank you so much. I really hope that you have an amazing rest of your day.
You
And
too.
to my audience, thank you again for joining us on this episode. And we will see you next time on Test Those Breasts.
Thank you. Mwah. Thank you.